Alright guys, Pig Project Part 1. The last little group of videos I did was called the Feta Project, and that is concluded now, and worked out really well actually. So I'm going to show you how that came into play in this current project, and just my thinking behind all that, but it worked out pretty well actually. If you look back on that group of videos, my primary concerns were number one, first and foremost, was population. Number two was maintain goods and forge points while I was deleting gators, which are excellent producers for both of those, but they're pretty wicked population drain. So as I'm deleting gators, I wanted a way to maintain close to the same goods or forge points that my city would normally produce. Number three criteria here was to print Feta before storing Aegeans. So the part of the end goal there was to store the Aegean resorts, but I didn't want to get rid of those and not be able to plant Feta afterwards, you know what I mean? So let me clear my notes here. Let's zoom out. I'm down to, I think there's 11 right here, and then I've got one more that's a placeholder for another Neo Marble. And if you look back on those original videos, I had mentioned that I was going to be planning some of these marble gateways. The priority number one was population, though, and that was always the case. So I'm actually down to 2 alligators now, and I think I'm just going to keep them for sentimental purposes at this point. But I've replaced most of those with jester stages, and then the few jester stages that I could not supplement, I just collapsed this bottom row in favor of the Earth's Guardians. So let's compare that to a gator side by side. Population 9,000 drain in Titan versus 7,000 drain, but 2/3 of the size. So the alligator is actually way heavier on the population drain. Same footprint as a Green Guardian would give me 60 personal goods. Green Guardian only gives me 54 personal goods. So slight hit on the goods there. But I was saving roughly 3,000, 2,000 population per pair that I replaced. So that was the main goal. On a side note, speaking of population, I did jump to Space Hub, and part of my strategy was to one-up kit all of my population providers. So Crimson Dragons, Celtic Tavern, Orange Streams, the biggest population providers. I one-upped those to Space Hub era for the population gain, but I left a lot of my population neutral and population drain in Space Age Titan. So that's still Titan. That's still Titan. Alligator Swamp is still Titan. So I'm still accumulating Titan goods, which is nice for the Saturn Great Buildings. But I've got the population benefit of the Space Hub providers. So up to 313,000 available population now. And if you look back at some of my Feta videos, I was down to 5,000, 10,000 available, which isn't enough to plant even one silky at 20,000 or 25,000, whatever they are. So that was the main issue, and we've pretty much resolved that at this point. Feta Project, though, is kind of ironic considering I've only got 12 of them left. But looking back, I'm actually really glad that I did it the way that I did do it. We'll jump into my inventory real quick just so you can see what I'm looking at. I've got a ton of alligators as well as the rune gardens. These 1x3s. I've got a ton of those in storage. But I was also able to print roughly around 150 feta. I stored as many as I could, but I didn't feel too bad about deleting them when necessary. So I think I've got maybe 100 left in inventory, something like that. These last few locations are earmarked. This will be 2 more of these pigsties, which is kind of the purpose of the video. I'll come back to that. They are the ascended version though, so I'm going to wait for the next round of QI before I plant those. And then these 3 will be another pair of the Green Guardians, and I'm just waiting for those to print before I plant them. So overall, the feta project actually worked out really nicely. It was intended to be temporary filler, and that's what I accomplished, right? But also kind of somewhat disposable filler. They were so easy to print and in such big volume that if I had to fill up however many squares, especially jumping to Space Hub, I ended up shifting probably 40 of these into the Space Hub expansions before I was able to plant some of this new hardware. So that was actually really nice to have the temporary filler. And then when it's all said and done, I don't have a problem deleting them if I don't have the store kits available to store them. This last group of 4 down here is earmarked for more, probably not escutcheons. I don't think I'll get any more this event, but definitely Neo Colossus will slide into that location. So overall, actually really happy with the way that turned out. It did get my population under control. That was priority number 1. Priority number 2 was to maintain goods and forge points as much as possible. My forge points have gone down, I don't know, probably 400-ish since I started this process, but I'm still at 7,800, so that's not a huge deal to me. Goods production is around 22,000 daily now, which does not include Blue Galaxy and the buildings that I'm using it on, which is typically Eco and Orange Dreams at 200 something per hit, you know. So goods production is definitely where I want it to be. I guess the last thing that was really nice about the feta project is that the dimensions are small enough to be really versatile with any kind of building that you would want to replace it with. So for example, if I had used the Green Guardians as filler, that's a 3x3, I would have a really hard time rearranging that into something like a dragon ship, right? It's 3 tall, so it fits width-wise, but then I've got a gap of 6 underneath it. Just really not a good pair for that. Versus something like, let's say, a mythical manor, the legendary lodge variation, right? That's pretty easy to pair with feta, and that would be 1-2 feta, 4 tall, 3 wide, and then 1-2 2x2s to give me the 5 width that I need, and I'd end up with a gap of 2 squares somewhere. You know what I mean? So that actually worked out really well in terms of accommodating some of these newer, the new building dimensions. And then the pigsty obviously is a perfect pair with 2 feta. So that's the purpose of this video. And I'll be right back to that. I do have a couple more side notes, but that is ultimately the purpose of this video, is comparing 2 feta to one of the pigsty things. So side note number 1 was the flexibility of those building dimensions, but more importantly was actually consolidating my road groups into what I think will probably be a permanent road system. So everything in this center group is set up with a nub pattern. So there's one little feeder road between each of these buildings. And there's a possibility that as buildings change, I'll have to adjust this row 1 or 2 squares vertically as time goes on. But for the most part, jesters are going to stay. And then this entire center group is essentially just population providers. So that's the reason why this group is here. So I'm not inclined to change this group at all unless there's a new road building that comes out that's just mind-blowingly amazing that I have to rearrange this group. But for the most part, I've got some really efficient population providers in the center. They all provide healthy amount of attack, goods, forge points. I'm getting my finish special from my jesters, so at this point there's really no reason to rearrange the center group, in my opinion. All the changes that I'm making in my city are happening in the bottom down here. I have a feeling that these ecos will probably be next on the chopping block, actually, which is kind of ironic, but that's the nature of the beast, I guess. That's kind of my intuition, though. I think these will be replaced pretty soon by some other small roadless hardware. But there again, that's kind of why I like feta as filler. So hypothetically, the next big thing is, let's say it's 3x4. Just a wild hypothetical scenario there. I can replace that group and then pull some feta out of inventory as filler, right? Until I get the matching pair. Does that make sense? So the feta project actually ended up paying off in more ways than one. Let me put these guardians back real quick. Let's check the stats of feta and the pigsties. This is my oink project. We'll look at the ascended too, just for kicks and giggles. QI bonus mostly on the ascended. It's 20,000 supplies, couple goods, and some supply boost for QI. Excellent on goods and forge points, but it is ascended, so it will expire eventually. Let's compare that to the non-ascended version of the pigsty, though, so permanent stats. Same footprint as 2 feta, gives 60 goods. Feta gives 60. Right, 2 of them would give 60. Gives 40 guild goods. The difference with the pigsty is that it gives 75 previous goods. And as much as I love my guild, I would rather have the previous goods now that I'm in Space Hub in order to keep printing Saturn Great Building goods. Also 150% improvement on forge points as well as attack. So that actually worked out pretty well. And if you rewind to the feta project as I was going through it, I said the main thing was to reduce population by getting rid of gators, right? And plant population neutral as a filler until I was able to repurpose the population that I was saving from gators into a better building. So pigsty is effectively 2 alligators as well. Let's compare the stats on that. 2 alligators would give me 80 goods. I'm only getting 60 from the pigsty. I would get 60 guild goods from the gator, but here's where the previous goods come in. Now I'm getting 60 current, 75 previous from the pigsty. In terms of population, 2 alligators would be 14,000 drain. The pigsty is 12,000 drain. In Titan, I don't remember the space hub consumption, but in Titan, you're saving about 2,000 population on the pigsty. Anyways, the goal was to save population in order to be able to plant more population consumption. So with 300,000 available, I have plenty to plant the last couple pigsties as well as green guardians, and then population neutral down here. So in terms of population, that worked out perfectly. Let's get out of edit mode real quick and check some city stats as well as inventory. So I don't know exactly how many. I think I'm up around 80, 85 jesters, something like that. I've got a lot of jesters, a lot of blue, right? I love GBG. I like to be able to hit pretty high attrition. So even with 80 or 85 jesters, I'm still maintaining a pretty healthy amount of attack.